Hi, I'm Gerd Tundle, acclaimed health journalist, turned motivational speaker, and transformational coach. This show is for anyone who wants to lead a happier, healthier, and inspired life. Create more self-love, inject more joy and abundance into their daily life. Join me for inspiring interviews and spiritual topics so you can become a soul warrior. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Get Inspired with Girls podcast. I'm your host, and today I have a self-mastery guest who is an amazing soul helping people to live with happiness. Gary Van Warmerdam is the creator of pathwaytohappiness.com, who combines lessons from changing beliefs from negative thoughts to emotions and behaviours. And he's the author of MindWorks, which is a practical guide to changing our thoughts and emotional reactions. Gary believes we can all lead a happier life from the inside out. Gary, it's an absolute pleasure having you on my show, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Oh, bless you, Gary. Well, it's just been interesting talking to you just before the interview. I'm really interested about what your life was like before you became a coach.
Well, I was an engineer. I was actually an officer in the Navy, working mostly in the engineering plant. I had become disillusioned with, how glamorous and, from the commercials. It wasn't like that. It was a lot of hard work and long days. So I was burned out. And then I was in a relationship, and the relationship was all beautiful and sprinkled with fairy dust, and I was in love, and then it didn't get so nice. It became actually emotionally abusive, I'd say.
Wow.
And I was getting criticized a lot. She had anger, and I was a recipient of it. And I ended up walking around on eggshells with her and feeling inadequate, insecure, and got so low that it was like my self-esteem was such. It was like, well, I should be with her because no one else would want to be with me. It's kind of my story had gotten so low like that. Well, that finally took a breaking point when she would get physically violent. And so I said, okay, I'm not this, I don't know what to do here. It might even be my fault, but I'm not going to stay here in this relationship while I figure it out. And so I left, and I had been pretty happy in my life up until really that year. But it was a kind of a happy-go-lucky, it was an unconscious happy.
Yeah.
Things had just gone along well for me. And so here I'd hit this kind of dark place, and I'm like, how did I get here? And I didn't know. And I was like, I don't want this to happen again. And so I said, I got to figure out what was in my decision-making process that got me into this unhappy career and unhappy relationship, and then why in the relationship part, why I continued to stay. Because I think would get bad, and I'd talk myself into leaving, or I'd let her talk me into staying. And so.
And how long had you been in that relationship?
I was in a relationship about a year.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to get back to being happy, but I needed it to be, something that I could control, and not just like by happenstance because I grew up and that's the way I lived. Because if I wasn't aware, I could lose it again. Some drama in the world. And so I made a strong commitment. A really strong commitment. I was like, I'm going to be happy no matter what. I'm going to figure out what's going on in my head and my decision-making process and make better choices. And it was a very different kind of commitment because I was committing, I didn't realize at times, to something emotional about myself. What is something emotional in my life? All my other commitments have been to people, had been for career, for success, for education. It's all these normal external status things. But this commitment was, well, no, my internal emotional state, how I want to feel. This is now priority over all of those. And because if I could have a great relationship or job, career, success. But inside, if I feel miserable, I won't like any of it. So I better figure out the inside part first. So 2 weeks after that commitment, through a friend who I'd known all through college years before, I got introduced to a gentleman named Miguel Ruiz, who later wrote the best-selling book, The Four Agreements, and other books. And he became my mentor, an amazing spiritual teacher, a practical man, a former medical doctor, who'd kind of looked at the world and said, well, there's a lot of medical problems, but if we solve all the physical things going on with people will still be miserable. They're suffering emotionally. Mm-hmm. And so he, through a lot of his spiritual training and background and traditions, said, I think I want to address the emotional suffering of people, the emotional pain that they're in. And so that's what his teaching was around in a real practical way. So I started to study with him, figured out I could learn a lot from this guy, which I would tell you a year before, I couldn't have accepted. I think I had such an ego and a self-importance. I thought I knew all the answers, and if people just did it my way, everybody would be fine, kind of ego. So somewhere in that year of becoming unhappy, I got some humility and said, I don't have all the answers. I need to learn stuff that I don't know about. And so I was ready to kind of digest down what he was sharing. And so I began my journey with Miguel Ruiz, trying to figure out, and what became a realization that I had all these unconscious beliefs, emotional patterns, socialized patterns, self-sabotaging patterns that I had no clue about. They were operating underneath the radar in my own behavior and my own thoughts. And that I began a kind of inward journey and inventory to clean up.
Wow. So, you went through this journey and you kind of realized what happened next. So, after you'd met Miguel, what was your next step on your journey?
The next step was, because my background's engineering, and I don't know if that's just it or I'm naturally skeptical. My next step was to be a skeptic. So I went to a talk that Miguel gave, and I thought, that's pretty good. Nothing mind-blowing happening. I didn't go to some blissful state. I didn't have some great consciousness. I just thought, well, that was good. And so a month later, he was back in the area and he gave another talk. And so I went again. I was like, well, that was interesting. And I probably went to 3 or 4 of those. And then I thought, well, I'm kind of getting the information, but that isn't really going to be enough. I think I need to actually do this, which is different than thinking about it or having knowledge about it. And I said, well, gosh, what is this thing that is this process? It was before he had the book. There was no kind of process.
Right.
But through some friends who were studying with him and such, I figured, okay, I want to be happier. And emotionally, we kind of have 2 domains of emotion. We either have emotions that come from fear or emotions that come from love. And if I want to be happier, I need to have more love and less fear. So, okay, I'm going to go do this. And I guess I'm going to go figure out what I'm afraid of, what's inside that are fears, that's holding that emotion of fear, that's connected to beliefs of fears. And I'm going to get rid of it. Not knowing how I would get rid of it, I knew I had to do that. So I committed to the process, not knowing how I would get it done. And so at the time I wasn't working, so I was taking long road trips, seeing national parks, doing a lot of hiking. And so I began to make notes. What are my fears? What are the thoughts in my head that are negative and judgmental or fearful or limiting? And so I just began to make notes and inventory. It's like, gosh, why is that? And then I began to explore, why is that thought there? And what is that one about? And And I didn't really have answers, but I just kept making notes. And what I began is a process we called an inventory of looking inward into what are these beliefs? What are these limiting beliefs? What are these fear-based beliefs? And so that began my journey. Things that were inside that I hadn't noticed before.
And would you say the toxic relationship you had, was it something linked to your childhood, or was just that something at that time you were going through and that kind of person was mirroring how you were feeling?
I didn't relate it to childhood at all. I think, got into the relationship and it was great. And I didn't have drama growing up in my house. We weren't very emotional and affectionate, kind of Northern European, kind of stoic family. But we weren't, Italian, loud and expressive either. Where all the emotions are on the sleeve in the full range. We were all pretty calm, but so I would say in some ways my emotions weren't, that's not exactly repressed, but not out of control either. It wasn't driven by them. But anyhow, so in this relationship, it was really loving. It was beautiful. She was great in so many ways. It was a wonderful connection. And it was really a heart-opening experience. And so in that heart-opening experience, I began to make agreements that, because this was due. And it was interesting as later in the inventory, I would review these agreements. It was like, I love you and only you. You're the only one that makes me happy. I can't see my life without you. All of this very loving, romantic stuff. But, when it would get bad, I was still living by the agreement, I love her and only her. She's the only one that makes me happy. If I were to then think, look, okay, this is so bad, I need to leave. I can't do this anymore. I was still living by that agreement, that energetic momentum of that commitment. You're the only one that makes me happy. So somewhere in my subconscious from the months before, having committed to that and say, oh, if I leave her, I won't be happy because she's the only one that makes me happy. If I want to be happy, I got to stay with her. Even though we were doing high trauma and I was a recipient of criticism and anger.
Yeah.
But my belief system was saying, no, we need to be her to be happy. Oh, we committed to her. We're committing to all of this. And I didn't realize, no, I can commit to love somebody, but I don't have to take the abuse.
Yeah.
That's not what my commitment was to. She was behaving as a different person the first months of a relationship, as opposed to a year in. I was like, wow, I'm still committed to the person I met, but the person she's being now is not the one I'm committed to. And I didn't know that even that existed or how to shift that. So over a number of agreements, and then, we get in a disagreement. And she was intensely relentless in debating. And my personality was, well, okay, that you're really upset. That's the way you see it. It was easier for me to acquiesce to her point of view than continue a conflict. And so whether that's my nature or that's the childhood upbringing, whatever, I was appeasing the other person, but each time I was doing it, I was agreeing that I was wrong, that I made the mistake, that I was inferior, that she was smarter. All these kind of little agreements seeped in the subconscious until I was feeling incredibly inadequate and just acquiescing to her point of view all the time.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said that, because in the past, I've seen certain people over the years, and a lot of the times they define their happiness through their partner. It's never that having their own happiness separate. And I feel that a lot of us don't realise that you can just be happy. The partner's there to be it's not. We always say the word other half, don't we? When really it's not about having an other half, because you're already full anyway. It's just having somebody there who understands you more than anything else.
I would like to. I'd say I agree with what you say, and I would like to think that it was all just that simple in relationships. But I think there's lots of different ways and different dynamics that happen as well.
Yeah.
So I'll agree with that. And there's a lot of other things.
Yeah, I just mean like sometimes like we always say other half and
yeah, as if we're not a whole person, as if underlying is that implied assumption, I'm not a whole person.
Yeah. And that our happiness relies on just that other person, when really actually we can make ourselves happy and they can make us happy too, but we've got to be happy in ourselves as well.
Yeah. We don't have to do it that way, but I find it's better for me.
Yeah.
Some people can do that kind of dependency, but then you get into these other consequences: fear of leaving, fear of being alone, insecurity, jealousy. My partner's giving too much attention to somewhere else. We end up becoming, a little bit frantic in ourselves or anxious within ourselves.
Yeah.
With that beginning structure of agreements.
Yeah.
Potentially, not necessarily, but potentially. Depends what else is going on as far as agreements and how we feel.
Absolutely. So, you're now a coach. So how are you helping people?
I teach them very much the similar process that I did. It's because I found it effective. It works. I have people look inward. So what are your thoughts and what are your emotions and what are the beliefs connecting those two? And what are your behaviors and what are the underlying beliefs that are driving those behaviors? And so if we look at that and become aware of it, then we can change it. If you're doing it, you're not even knowing you're doing it. You have no chance to change it. I'm kind of the opposite of most coaches. A lot of the coaches, but I use the term coach because it's easy. There's not really a simple name for, the opposite of coach. Most coaches come along and say, well, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And they kind of paint out their perfect life. And I want my weight to be this, and I want to be this fit, and I want to have this kind of relationship and this kind of income. And they imagine their perfect life. And they say, okay, those are my goals. Okay, and the coach says, okay, well, we're going to do this to achieve all that. And they kind of guide you through and push you through and maybe find what roadblocks are in the way of achieving that. I kind of look at that standard and say your subconscious probably already has that image. What I'll call an image of perfection. And the voice in your head is one of them, called an inner judge, your inner critic, is saying, oh, you're failing because you're not there yet. Oh, look at you, you're overweight. Oh, look at you, you don't have enough money. Oh, nobody will probably want to go out with you because of this. Or all these kind of negative thoughts. Because your subconscious already has this standard of what we're supposed to be and says you're not it yet, therefore you're failing. You're not enough, you're not good enough because you aren't this perfect thing yet. And so we get this barrage of negative thoughts because we have this image of perfection. Now, it's also what we think will make us happy, but in the meantime, the judge is criticizing us and we feel inadequate, less than, miserable, not good enough because we aren't there yet. And yet we cling to it because we believe it'll make us happy. So I look at this dynamic and say, well, okay, good to have goals, but if the inner critic in your head is using them to beat you down, you're getting farther away from them than closer. I look at that dynamic and say, let's get rid of the inner critic and the self-judgment that's really going on before we try to get to this imaginary happiness based on something external. Because internally, the self-criticism is going to continue even after you reach your goals. But people, they reach their goals and they're like, I don't feel really happy. And I think, because you still got your inner critic running. Or your inner critic says, but you should have done this by now, and it raises the bar. So I said, well, let's get a hold of what's going on inside and let's tame this inner critic. And we have a much greater chance at happiness than if we achieve these goals. You can be happy with yourself where you are. You can be happy with yourself on your journey to achieve what you want. You can be satisfied and at peace internally and while you're just doing a simple thing. You don't have to wait until you achieve this list of the perfect things and the perfect relationship to be happy. That's just holding it way out in front of you, feel like we'll never get there. When happiness can be right here and now, what you feel right here and now. So that's why I focus on this internal process and not the achievement of external goals.
absolutely relate with what you're saying. Yeah, totally. A few years ago, most of my life, I always wanted to be a journalist, and I actually was in the journalism world a few years ago, and I was always striving for perfection, Gary. Like, always had to be at the top, had to get to this level, always pushing myself. But inside, like you said, I kept getting there, but I was never internally happy. And it took it took a cancer scare, me collapsing 3 times in an office. One time when I was working in Canada, my left arm stopped working for me, to realise that actually I will never be happy with those goals. That is not actually what I want to achieve. All I wanted was peace and happiness.
Yeah. But we're conditioned by, thousands of experiences of accomplishing something, getting a gold star when we're a kid. We, draw a picture and mom's like, "Oh, that's beautiful. That's really great. You did nice," or we get right. I think a math problem right, or something. We do something right. We do something. We get praise for. And we're like, "Oh, let me go be a success. Let me go get things right. Let me go be top of the field." And so this becomes where our mind gets conditioned to go get the reward from, which is praise from other people, recognition from other people, which then allows us to open up our emotional feel-good self-acceptance feeling. But that self-acceptance feeling and love for ourselves doesn't have to be dependent on an opinion of somebody else.
Absolutely. And then what happened was, whilst that was happening, Gary, it went away from what people thought, and then it was like, well, now I'll buy this handbag, this expensive handbag, or this top, so I'll feel better. And so I'd buy that thing, and I'd be like, what's next? Because the happiness would go. So it'd be like 2 days of happiness having this new bag, and then be like, oh, I'm sad again. What should I get now? Okay, I'll buy that thing and that thing. But it was never, because it was the internal job. And and when I went through the transformation and realised actually I didn't need any of that, and all I needed, like you said, was absolutely what you said before. Like, I needed to just be happy in my own skin and love myself. Some people are like, guys, you might think this is absolutely mad. I literally gave all away my expensive handbags, my clothes, because I didn't feel happy at that point. Even though I had that money and was buying those things, that wasn't my happiness. And so I gave everything away. And then, emotion doesn't come from a handbag. Yeah. Emotion doesn't from a car. So where does emotion come from? Why is it created? Yeah.
This is kind of like a really important question, but not one we learn in school. Like, where do our emotions come from? Why do we create them? Why do we not create other ones? How can we change that? Yeah. And here's the, the essential teaching from my mentor was, what is happiness? Happiness is a feeling of when love is coming out of you. And if it's coming out of you, it means it's created inside you. Yeah. And how do we create more love and less fear? And sometimes that's just a matter of where we focus our attention. Yeah. Sometimes that's a matter of, what is the fear of expressing love, opening up to someone? It's a vulnerability. If we're vulnerable and we're close, we're loving with someone, or we could get hurt because I had this broken heart when I was 16. Or this really good friend, was 10, they moved away, and, it's like, so there's this fear of being vulnerable, which is fear of love. So what are these layers that we've learned in our history? Yeah. That change the emotions we create and the ones we don't. Yeah. But the emotions aren't created by a handbag or a job title or amount of money you make. Yeah. We can have emotional responses to those things, but those are often conditioned. By the time we're in our 20s, they're just conditioned, and we can change that conditioning. Yeah. I guess as well, because, when we're really young, we're kind of in our own little world, we're creative, and we kind of do whatever we want. We, walk around like, la, 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 don't care about anything. And then we go into the system of the school, and then it's like, you're right, it's all fear-based. So then we think we need to get a good job, we need to get a good education or to get a good job. So we're always being moulded. But we lose that inner love because it's all about competing. Even the games that we play, I've forgotten what it's called now, where you remove the chair. Musical chairs, that's it. Musical chairs, yeah.
Yeah, that's where we're being moulded to compete who will get the last chair. Like, it's like little slowly mind games that we've been taught. And I feel that that's what distances from love, from like loving each other. So like you said, by the time we hit our 20s, we don't really know, we've kind of lost who we are or where we're heading. And then before we know it, that's all that we're craving, aren't we, really? It's the love.
At a deeper level, yeah. At our 95% of our behaviors, decisions, thinking is all unconsciously driven. Much in the way we go to drive a car, we don't think about how to drive the car.
Yeah.
We don't think, oh, I got to move my foot from the brake to the gas to take off here, and back to the gas, and I'll press it this much to go this fast. We don't think about those decisions because we've thought about it so many times. We've trained our nervous system and our muscles, and it's all done automatically. So unconscious. So 5% of our attention is on driving the car. The other 95% is talking on the phone or thinking about the meeting we're going to have. All of these patterns that are emotional are 95% unconscious to us. Things we're doing in relationship to try and get attention, to feel good about ourselves. We have to take them out of their unconscious patterns.
Yeah. I guess it's like unlearning to relearn, isn't it?
A lot of it is unlearning. A lot of this is my experience unlearning. And it becomes this scratch your head discovery, like, I didn't even know I was doing that. I didn't know I had that belief. Yeah.
You just reminded me some things from the past where I used to be called Gary an alpha female because I used to hide behind my thoughts. I didn't want to share anybody because I was afraid to get hurt again. So I had all these barriers, and by the time somebody would meet me, they would be like, "Oh, she's a bit scary," because I'd built up that defense mechanism, and then I didn't actually realize that I was doing it. I just thought it was just me. That's how I am, and kind of almost made myself believe that's who I am. I don't show love. I don't give hugs. I only do handshakes and behave in a certain manner.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of, say, the past. I'm studying this extensively, but you were educated to be successful, but in a world that was pretty much created and established by men.
Yeah.
A professional world. And so to do that and to be respected and to be considered, you have to be a professional in a way that's men had previously established what is professional. And that means you're less emotional. And this is across the board, where women, the nature of women is to be much more expressive and be in touch with their emotions and more nurturing. I mean, by our long cultural history, men are more tribal. They're the warriors. They've got to protect. They've got to go hunt and kill and get the game and the food. So they're the hunters, and the women are more the nurturers. In the last generations, a lot of that is of the value of women being in touch with emotions that could really help men has been lost, because women are conditioned to be a success in the workplace, and they find it very unsatisfying because they're trying to live in a masculine-centered society.
Yeah.
And have these masculine traits where they have to repress a lot of what they're feeling, and they end up being numb. And that's not to say, the way men do it, which is to be numb, is healthy at all. Men are just more conditioned to survive there and be okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what happened, actually, Gary, in Canada when I worked for CC National News. I was like putting on that front, putting on like everything's fine, like basically being neutral. So you couldn't figure out who I was. And then my left arm stopped working. I collapsed, and it was basically because I'm left-handed. So my female energy was basically crying out loud saying, "Hey, give me some self-love."
Exactly. Self-nurturing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about me and loving myself. I was just too busy consumed with like go, 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 and doing things, like you said, in a structured kind of almost male-oriented way, that I had no love for myself. And it was a kind of almost like a reminder that I needed to come back and be present in myself and actually like give myself some time out and love myself.
Easily lost in the busyness of trying to become a success.
Absolutely. So Gary, can you tell us about the Pathway to Happiness?
Pathway to Happiness is a website I set up with a whole audio program. I call it the Self-Mastery Course. Aside from a lot of free material, which is podcasts and videos and articles, the heart of it is a Self-Mastery Course, which is a step-by-step coaching program for people to say, okay, what's going on internally? How can I change the emotions I'm generating? What beliefs, what thoughts are interfering? What is this inner critic? How can I step back from it, not believe it, be skeptical, and not have it rule my life and my emotions? So it's a process to inventory your belief system. Become aware of the ones you're unconscious of, and more importantly, change it. So that's set up in my online courses. I've also put in little other courses, well, some of them not so little, for process for releasing emotions from the past and the stories of our past, or anxiety, or different things like that. But that's, I guess, the heart of how to look internally, how to become self-aware of this system that's unconscious, that's often been running our behaviors, our negative thinking, our thoughts, and to change it.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. That is, I can imagine, like, once we kind of realize like what we've been doing, it's kind of almost like you have an epiphany, don't you?
It's you have an epiphany, but more often people have a series of epiphanies. It's not just one. It's one's not going to do it in my experience. People I've met who they've had this, literally they've had this blast of light and had this enlightening perspective. They've then had to go and say, okay, how do I go integrate in the world and have all these discoveries? Because a lot of their mind is still there, a lot of their belief system is still there, but they don't believe it as much. It still has to be dismantled, and so that takes a number of discoveries as well. So it's not a what do I need to know to change all this process, or like as if you could have some bit of information and it will all change. No, it's a matter of I need to go do a bunch of practices for this little change, and then I'll know something different.
Amazing. I like that. And so it's at the pathwaytohappiness.com.
Pathwaytohappiness.com. I also explain it in my book called Mindworks, and you can get it at your online retailers, ebook or print.
Perfect. Gary, we are coming towards the end of the show. It's gone so quick. I've got two questions to ask you. The first one is, what are your 5 top tips for someone who wants to transform their life around and they just don't know where to start?
The first one's commitment. It has to be a priority. And I'd say the priority. Because if being a success at your job and having the perfect relationship is more of a priority, your belief systems that drive you to do that will stay intact, even if they're overall making you unhappy. So, if you put being happy third, the ones that drive you to be success, that maybe ensure the inner critic still kicks you forward because we believe that's the voice that motivates us and allows us to get things done, even though it's beating us up emotionally. If success and relationship are your 1 and 2, then you're supporting your inner critic, which is driving you to those, and happiness is third, you're not going to get there. Okay, so that commitment. And some people, in the way we've learned to think about things through school and knowledge, is, oh, but I don't know what to commit to, and I need to know how to do it. Like, no, you don't need to know how to do it. Yeah. You need to know that you will do it. I will do it no matter what. It's not, commitment isn't, gosh, I really like to, that would be nice. That's not commitment. Commitment is, I'm doing this no matter what. Yeah. And when you do that, it kind of intense, your personal intent, this force of will goes out and says, okay. And the techniques often fall in line after that commitment. You'll figure out how. Decide you're going to do it and then figure out how.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely relate with that one, actually. I was just going to say, anything I've ever put my mind to, if I just, where I've been half-hearted, it's never really happened. And then when I've been like full on force, even if I didn't have the resources, randomly people would email me or text me. Things would just flow.
Yes. All of us have had that kind of commitment. Everybody I talked to has had that kind of commitment somewhere in their life. They decided, I have to do this. I'm doing this no matter what. And it happened. Okay. We don't even give any brain power or any energy towards a doubt or what if it does. It's like, no, I'm figuring this out. I'm getting it done.
Yeah.
So any fears and doubts that would sabotage it, don't even enter into it. Second one, focus on changing the habits. Focus on the smaller stuff and what's in front of you. Some people say, okay, I want to be really happy. Maybe they make the goal to be enlightened. If you make the goal to be enlightened, or whatever that goal is, that your mind does this interesting calculation, like I mentioned earlier. The inner critic is continually measuring you every day. That says, are you there yet? No, you're failing. Are you there yet? No, you're failing. Oh, you didn't act very spiritual in that moment. Oh, you didn't act very conscious or evolved in that moment. Oh, you had a negative thought. You're failing. Every little thing becomes a failure. So the goal has to be, you can't set it up so the inner critic gets to use it as leverage to kick you. You have to set it up so my goal is to get better every day. My goal is to practice this 20 minutes a day. My goal is to sit and meditate. I'm not going to make my goal to have a completely quiet mind for 20 minutes. My goal in the beginning is to just sit for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch the storm of negative thoughts. They're all going to be there because it usually gets louder when we sit and meditate. But if you make your goal to have a quiet mind, you're going to sit down and you're going to fail. But you say, I'm going to take the action every day. I'm going to do my journal writing 20 minutes every day. Okay, I didn't do it today. I'm going to do 40 minutes tomorrow. Get up a little earlier. I'm going to take the action every day. Progress will happen if you take the action every day. You take good actions. Then focus on what's in front of you, which is taking the action every day, every week, every month. And you'll get to whatever it is the outcome you want. But if you focus on the goal, the mind will, particularly the inner critic, can also always create any kind of an interpretation or look at things that aren't working out and say you're failing. And that's really going to demotivate you and take you out of continuing. 3, you got to kick the inner critic's ass. It is the tyrant in our lives, and it derails us. And you have to really become this witness observer, step outside of it and say, hey, you don't get to be the boss of my life. You're not very good at it. As much as the inner critic tries to act and talk like an authority, it really doesn't know shit. Okay? If it was so smart, why didn't you tell me before I did that thing? No, you wait till after. Well, after, I already know it didn't work out. When I know it didn't work out, then you say, oh, I knew it wouldn't work out. It's like, yes, but you only say it after when I already know it. Like, it's not at all helpful. So we wouldn't have it as a best friend. We wouldn't have it as our friend at all. If it lived in our house, we'd kick it out. But we let it run around in our mind and assume that it's advising us in a helpful way, and it's not. I think you have to really change, your understanding of that inner critic. It may have been helpful. We put a lot of faith in it early in our life when it was kind of helpful navigating the world. But as we've gone to adulthood, it's grown into kind of a really tyrant. It's like a tree in our backyard that we've never pruned, and now it's overgrowing and nothing else can grow. Okay, so you really have to and this isn't one that you can do in a day. This takes chipping away at, but it can be done. I'd say 4, get a mentor or a guide. Figuring this out on your own is the unconscious beliefs, the 95%, will steer you towards doing things that reinforce the 95%.
Mm.
The ideas of what you think will be good for you and it will change are often going to be steered to what's comfortable for you. And what's comfortable for you is the things that will keep the 95% of your behaviors and dynamics and beliefs intact. When you go look at your belief system, you inventory it in a thorough way, it's uncomfortable. It's a humbling realization after humbling realization, like, oh wow, I do that. Oh gosh, I'm kind of a jerk at times. Oh, I have this fear. Our ego, our comfort level image of ourselves doesn't want to really acknowledge we have this fear, a self-judgment. So this is a humbling process, but it's a cleaning up process. We get to feel better as we get through it. So whether it's an online course or it's a bunch of exercises in a book, take somebody else's guidance and do it, as opposed to what you think in your own mind is the best thing for you. And I'd say the fifth thing is that the transformation has to happen because of actions you take. It's like learning to swim. I can read 100 books on swimming, and I can be the most knowledgeable person about swimming. But I can't swim unless I go get in the water. Same with dancing, same with the martial arts, same with musical instrument, same with public speaking. Mm-hmm. Okay, same with your own personal transformation. These are all, you have to change it down to the level of your nervous system. So you feel differently doing those things. So you feel differently talking to another person. So you feel confident in front of a room or asking somebody out or just sitting by yourself in meditation. Your nervous system, your unconscious belief system has to change. It changes through action. Now, action might be sitting still for 20 minutes, but it's an action. Yeah. It's not reading and filling your head with more information about how great you should be so the judge can then say, well, gosh, you're not that great yet. Because all the information we acquire, our internal inner critic and other kind of voices in our head generally use that to reaffirm the same things they've already been telling us. And if they're negative, all our information is used to tell us more negative things about ourselves. So real change is going to happen because you take an action. Action might be a writing, a journaling exercise. It might be changing certain phrases you use in your speaking. So that's why my course, my self-rescue course, they're all actions you take. See, this is, and they're actions that go against the habits we've previously established. And this is the unlearning. We have to unlearn our old habits and build new ones that work for us, that work positively to enforce positive behaviors, that expose our fears, to help us not believe our negative thoughts, so that we can let them go and express love and create love instead of fear.
I love those 5 top tips. So those were amazing, and I absolutely relate with what you're saying. Definitely the last one. I was laughing because I hear a lot of people, they'll say, meditation, I can't do it. I've read all these books. I'm like, but when did you actually sit there? You can listen to all the people in the world, you can watch loads of YouTube videos, but you have to sit in that moment. And it is going to be hard. Like, I remember the time, like Gary, myself as well, like I used to look out the window or I'd listen to music, but eventually you'll find your rhythm and you'll find it, but you can't read everything. It's got to be, like you said, it's got to be doing the doing process.
It's a doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And meditation's a great example because the status quo of the unconscious belief system is don't sit and meditate. Go get busy. Go become a success. Go get the gold stars. Yeah. So then you'll get emotionally happy, right? Because somebody will notice and they'll praise you, and then you'll release that self-love for yourself because somebody else is finally giving you approval, saying you're okay. Yeah. That's the unconscious belief system status quo. The very opposite of that is I'm going to sit and do the exact opposite of what the stories in my mind tell me. And the mind isn't so straightforward. It doesn't say, well, we really want you to go be a success and you aren't, being productive right now. No, it'll say you aren't very good at this. You should just give up. Your body's sore. It does it in this roundabout thoughts that are causing us to feel bad if we believe them.
Yeah.
And so now we feel, if we're believing those thoughts, we feel bad sitting there. Oh, well, if I go make more money, I'll be happier. If I get another handbag, I'll be happier. And so we're emotionally conditioned to go back to that old habit.
Mm.
But real meditation in the beginning is, okay, yeah, you're going to have those thoughts because now you're observing the stuff that's inside that you're uncomfortable with, but it's a kind of chance to inventory. It's kind of chance to see the belief system be exposed. But critical to this is, and if there's a 6, you got to get to a witness observer to watch your mind. You have to step outside the chatter and see it as if it was somebody else talking to you. Go, that's my mind. It's not me. Yeah. And until that happens, you can do very little to change it. Because if you're in a storm of thoughts and you believe you're the one thinking it, you identify that that's true, and I really am that way, you're just reinforcing all of its structure. So the critical element here is like before any of that changes, you have to move to a witness observer and step out of it.
And I find that
meditation's a hard way to go, but it's one of the ways to go. I break it down in my course and make it very practical and faster, actually.
Yeah. I think, and as well, like a lot of people think, they're about to sit on this meditation pillow and everything's, they're going to close their eyes and when they wake up, everything's going to be amazing. That is like not true. Like, oh God, Gary, I remember like I was crying, I was confused, my body was like moving, doing different movements, and I think it took a good like year and a half for it to start being like calm. And I think because people don't have that, initial experience, they think, oh, no, I can't go back now. It's almost like they're afraid.
Oh, yeah. Well, the unconscious belief system is like pushing us away from this very exploration of it. Yeah. Absolutely. I haven't been. I've done a lot of silent time, but friends who've done 10-day silent retreats, it's it's incredibly uncomfortable for, like the first 3 days. Like a friend of mine is like, 4th day, he's like, oh, this is kind of painful.
Yeah.
And later after all of it kind of moved out, then it was like, oh, you could really enjoy it. But, first week, he's like, this. But that's kind of purification process.
Yeah.
Yeah, your system the unconscious system is trying to maintain the status quo. Doesn't respond well to, being challenged in this way of a different habit.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, it's not, when you really get outside of the observer, you notice, gosh, it's my unconscious belief system that's really uncomfortable with this process. I'm actually fine.
Yeah.
And when you can kind of get that kind of conscious perspective about your different patterns, your ego, and go, God, my ego is just thrashing about in this process. I'm fine. You can actually be entertained and like, wow, it's really afraid, or it's really protesting, or it's really criticizing me. It's like, but it's ridiculous. That's a kind of clarity and perspective that you have to work towards and build. But it doesn't come in day one. And in the beginning, it feels like you're outraged, you're afraid, you're uncomfortable, you're in pain, because we're identified with so many of these thoughts that we feel like it's us. Instead of when we step outside consciously as a witness observer, we go, oh, it's ego, it's unconscious belief that's afraid, it's insecure, it's thrashing about, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And my last question is, what are you most grateful for?
Breathing. Breathing. I know it's not going to go on forever, but when I breathe, I feel pleasure. When I breathe, I feel love. I put my attention in the breath, and I feel this kind of euphoric life moving through my body. So the love comes with the breathing.
Wow. I love that. Well, Gary, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and just thank you for sharing your story. And it's just been a great conversation. I've loved it.
Thank you, Kirst. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking. It's been really enjoyable.
Bless you. Wow, what an amazing interview with Gary. Guys, do check out his website because some of the things that we talked about today were really inspiring, and it actually made me realise how our mindset kind of works and how we actually stop ourselves from leading a happier life. Unfortunately, that's the end of the show. You can find me on Twitter at IamGurds, that's IamGurds. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Get Inspired with Gurds, where I bring you lots of inspirational and motivational quotes and tips about life. And just before I leave, I want to leave you with this quote. Happiness is an inside job. Don't assign anyone else that much power over your life. That's a quote by Mandy Hale. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye.